So Rosemary, let's shift to our final topic today. Google's sustainability efforts. Their goal is to be operating on 24/7 carbon-free energy by 2030. And you're excited about this.
Yeah, I am excited. It's an exciting topic, right? Doesn't everyone get excited about, the accounting of clean energy?
Well, yeah, my Google searches are just irreparably harming the planet. So this is going to be good that this can reverse this. Any more? When I need to look up more carrot cake recipes or what the largest flightless bird is, I will no longer be contributing greenhouse gases. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, Google, it is a big energy user, but I was actually looking at a chart just recently about Bitcoin and how much energy it uses, because I had read that Bitcoin uses as much as Finland in total. And I mean, yeah, Bitcoin's cool and all, but I'm not sure how much we actually need to, add a Finland-sized amount of emissions to the world. And Google is like significantly less than that. So, like it registers on the same kind of scale as you would use to measure Finland or Bitcoin's emissions, but it's a lot smaller. And I also think that they are providing I can't do without, knowing immediately what's the world's largest flightless bird. So, I think that is important service that they're providing. And they started back in 2007. I'm just looking at a little infographic on their website. In 2007, they started with their net zero thing. So, they calculate their emissions, try and reduce it as much as possible. Whatever they can't, they just, pay somebody to not cut down a tree that they would have otherwise, they said that they would otherwise cut down. And I think that sort of net zero kind of thing, it was very good at the time, and it does provide a reason to bring extra renewables on board and pay for some important projects. But people are really rightly skeptical of some of these things. Like we see carbon neutral LNG projects, for example, where, they say, oh, this is a carbon neutral fuel, but it's still the same fossil fuel. It's just that they, paid a farmer who said he was going to cut down some trees. And it's like, it doesn't seem enough anymore. So then in 2017, Google moved to 100% renewable electricity. So then every kilowatt hour that they used was produced by a wind or solar farm somewhere at some time. So they're still relying on the grid mix. So at times when, at night, if there's no wind, then they're still using the grid power. And then this is the next step beyond that, where every electron that goes through a Google data center came from a wind turbine or a solar farm. So, I mean, they're still connected to the grid, but they know that there is green energy being produced at the moment that they're using it. And that's their plan for by 2030. They're calling it 24/7 carbon-free energy. And I also saw a term that I like, in contrast to net zero, they're calling it absolute zero. And I think that's obviously where the world has to get to. You can't kind of just net away all of our emissions when you're thinking of the planet as a whole. At some point, there's not going to be any any more ways to, provide offsets. So they're doing it through some of the normal ways where, you just try and, use less and make more green energy. And then one of the other interesting things that I saw as part of their plan is load shifting. So like a lot of what Google does needs to be done immediately. Like you don't want to put in your search for world's largest flightless bird and then they're like, okay, well, once, the sun comes up, we'll get back to you with an answer. You're not mostly going to be happy with that. Or Google Maps is like, oh yeah, we'll tell you tomorrow how you can get to your destination. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of stuff that they can choose when they want to do it. And so they're planning to shift a lot of that. So what does it say? They say they're shifting the timing of non-urgent compute tasks like creating new filter features on Google Photos, YouTube video processing, or adding new words to Google Translate. So they're going to shift those kind of tasks instead of just doing them whenever they feel like it. They're going to do it when there's a lot of solar, a lot of wind. And so in that way, you end up needing a lot less storage because, otherwise they're going to need to put in, say a whole ton of batteries so that they can keep providing green energy at any time of day. But if you do most of your energy using at times when there's already a lot of wind and solar, then we can reduce the size of the challenge. And the reason why I'm so excited about this, other than it just being an inherently fascinating subject, is because I just really think this is the biggest piece of the energy transition for society as a whole that we haven't taken advantage of yet. There's so many loads that we could do at a different time if we just had the, financial incentive or some other incentive to shift that load. So, for homes, that will be like EV charging. You're not just going to let it charge when you plug it in. You're going to have a smart charger that says, okay, now there's a lot of extra wind and solar, so charge your car up. And same with, like heat pumps and pool pumps, hot water heating, all that sort of thing. And then, on an industrial scale, there's a lot more stuff like, aluminium smelters or food processing companies that have deep freezers. They can all really vary their loads a lot, actually. And I think that it's going to make the energy transition much easier when we start to really take advantage of this flexibility that at the moment we don't barely even take advantage of at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's my one question I have, which is, this is all well and good for a company like Google or Apple or, the evil empire of Facebook, who they like sneeze $100 million bills, right? So it's like, yeah, let's go throw $250 million at this thing that doesn't make them any money, but it's philanthropic and good for the planet, et cetera. But like, what do smaller businesses do? Because they're not going to be able to say, oh yeah, let's allocate $5 million of our $30 million annual revenue to going, absolute zero. That's not going to make sense for like the 99.99% of businesses that aren't behemoth size.
I disagree.
So what's the path out for them?
I think.
Okay, well, what's the path out for them?
Well, I think that it will cost
smaller companies.
Google money to be the first to do it on a large scale. But then, the point is you're shifting load to when there's excess electricity in the system, which is also, we've got this happy, lucky coincidence that these days cheap electricity also means green electricity. So it does already can save individuals and businesses money. And, you see through flexible tariffs like Octopus Energy in the UK, or we've got Amber Electric in Australia. I don't know which ones you've got left in the US after, all the companies in Texas went bankrupt over it. But, these sorts of flexible tariffs are starting to figure out how to make their business model work. And there's definitely at least the potential for this to save money rather than cost money.
So is it then just like if I have a small business, I'm just opting into just a different utility provider? I'm just saying I want to buy my electricity from you, and you? Like, is it that simple? Because this thing with Google seems kind of complicated.
Yeah. In essence, it is that simple, but you need to have load that you can shift as well. So if you don't want to be there standing by your thermostat and adjusting it based on, watching the wholesale power price and adjusting your thermostat, then you're probably going to want some smart appliances, or you're going to want a utility or an energy retailer that is doing that for you, controlling your appliances for you. So it's kind of,
got it.
Not that simple in implementation. And that's why it's not rolled out yet.
Okay, but that makes sense. The way you use the analogy of like a high-tech thermostat, that helps me wrap my brain around it a little bit more. Alan, it seems like Google is going to be kind of the linchpin here. Is that kind of the way you see this, and others will follow in suit?
I think Google's going to be an outlier in the United States. I think having quote-unquote smart appliances in the United States is a no-go for most people. I think they're going to have a really hard time. And Obama administration tried it back in 2008 or 2009 and 10, and it went absolutely nowhere because there's a huge pushback in Congress and in the next election cycle against that and many other things for that matter. So it's a really hard sell in the United States to have the government turn your stuff on and off. It just will be. And the same thing exists on the industrial scale. On the industrial scale here in the States, the price of electricity fluctuates versus demand. So there always is a shift to take some of those higher loads, like in the aircraft business, we used to do a lot of high heat autoclave stuff at nighttime because electricity rates are cheaper. And we had occasional brownouts at some of the factories because the general consumer and when it's hot outside, is using a lot of air conditioning, so they would actually slow down the factories. So we have that sort of balancing thing at the moment. We just don't have it down to the individual household level. And I think that in the United States, it's going to be a really hard sell to wean people off being able to turn on their dishwasher at 2 o'clock in the afternoon if they need it on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I think a better approach is really providing more stability to the grid, more capability to the grid, which then produces more power, and be able to take things on and off the grid. It's going to be a better solution overall, and I don't necessarily see that we're in a somewhat of a crisis condition. I see a lot of LinkedIn posts lately, maybe because of the upcoming conference on world energy, and UN's been putting out some tweets about it, but it polarizes everything. And it doesn't move the technology forward. It doesn't move the arguments forward. It's just more of the same, and that's the frustrating part for me, because I think we could do a better job, both sides of this argument. Instead of calling each other hypocrite, which is what happens, we need to be able to figure out a way to make an argument that makes sense to both sides. Because I do think we're all going in the same direction generally. We're just arguing at one another all the time, and that doesn't help. Does that make sense? You see what I'm trying to get at? It's like there's so much politics to it that nothing's happening. Everybody calm down a little bit. We're going to figure this thing out. We will.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think that you have to. One way to manage load flexibility is to have a government or a utility controlling when your thermostat, like what it's set to. But then there's the other approach where it's up to the individual, and you can choose: do I want to pay this higher price now and have my air conditioner on, or do I prefer to save the money? And I do think at the moment, are there only people that are really, really getting into that are huge energy geeks like me, and maybe like you guys too. I don't know. I find it really exciting. There's plenty of people tweeting about, exactly what they're doing with their flexible tariff. And I see, I follow a couple of people on LinkedIn who are showing exactly how they're managing their home energy to make the most of these flexible tariffs. And they've got full control. Nobody has the capability to turn anything in their home on or off except for them. They just bear some risk of higher prices if they use it in these expensive periods. But I do think that for the most part, people do not want to get so involved with their energy that's going to be the only model for it. We'll probably have a model where you trust your utility to manage your bills. But I also think not everyone needs to do it. I think that if we just get enough people doing that, and if the financial incentive is enough, people will be more inclined to do it, then you are going to necessarily end up with cheaper and more stable energy for everybody else left on the flat tariffs, because you won't have so many, rolling brownouts, because you can't match up supply and demand if you've got enough people that are turning their air conditioner off. So I think we'll get some sort of mix, a mix of different ways to use electricity in the future, depending on what your personal preference is. But I'm certainly not in favour of just handing over control of your air conditioner and fridge and dishwasher to the government. That's not something I feel okay with. So yeah, I definitely feel sympathy with, your probably average American probably also doesn't want that.
Yep.